We've got Iowa in town, Tony, and I don't know where we obviously Ryan Day at his news conference on Monday, Jim Knowles as well. Your immediate or initial takeaways as we dive into this one.
We also got to talk with Chip Kelly, who was discussing what it's like to or dealing with a Phil Parker defense. And both Ryan Day and Chip Kelly said you can't out scheme Iowa. You just have to execute, prepare, and do what you do, and just hopefully you block them right, because even though Iowa has done the same thing forever, they've done the same thing forever. So they know how people are going to attack them. They develop their players. They're generally not out there as sophomores. These are fourth year juniors and fifth year seniors. As Day or Chip Kelly said, they're mature defense that you're playing against, and they know the defense. They know the system. They're comfortable in it. So they don't ask them to do a lot, but what they do well. And you're just not going to get any breaks. You've got to make their breaks. Now we saw Ohio State do that a couple of years ago with C.J. Stroud. They lit Iowa up, and this is going to be one where I just wrote a notebook. Chip Kelly talking about they're not going to give you anything. Iowa's never going to give you anything, so you have to go and earn it. But I think this is the kind of offense that can go and earn it via the run, via the pass, the RPO, things like that. Just have to avoid the one or two mistakes that Will Howard has a penchant for doing, because I think Iowa can take advantage of those. Now, can they turn them into points? Maybe if you put it at the 12-yard line like Ohio State did last week.
Yeah, I think it's an intriguing matchup, certainly. You look at that game 2 years ago, it was 54-10, and Iowa turned it over 6 times coming into Ohio Stadium, and now 2 years later, they get to come back to the site of one of their terrible losses, whereas Ohio State was holding out from that terrible, whatever it was, 55-21 or 31, whatever that stupid score was, when they played out at Iowa in I think it was 2017 was the year that they got throttled out there. So to me, you look at this. Iowa's got Caleb Johnson, who is an outstanding running back, ran for over 200 yards against Minnesota. And so obviously Iowa's going to try and establish the run with him and try and shorten the game the best that they can and take the air out of the ball, not allow Ohio State to get the ball back and put up a bunch of yards and a bunch of points. So to me, Ohio State's job for this scheme this week is put the hard hat on. And, Caleb Johnson's 222-pound running back. You're going to have to really struggle to keep him in front of you and not let him, move the chains and move the ball down the field. So Iowa, by all rights, should be 4-0. They outplayed Iowa State, I thought, in that game. They moved it pretty well. They had a first down at the 3-yard line in the second quarter and had to settle for a field goal. And ultimately, they lost the game by a point, 20-19. Their great Vaughn defense fell apart in the final minute as Iowa State, which had moved it all day, hit a pass down the right sideline for 30 yards to get into field goal range in the final minute. And 6 seconds left, guy hit like a 49-yard field goal for Iowa State to win on the road in Kinnick Stadium. They very rarely win there. Iowa State very rarely wins there. It's been a series dominated by Iowa in recent years. And, otherwise they'd be 4-0 and probably ranked 15th or 16th in the country. They don't give up that one pass down the sideline. This is a top 15 team playing at Ohio State this week.
I was actually making the point that was a 54-yarder from a freshman, Steve, for Iowa State. And so if he misses that, we were dissecting the game and all the things Iowa did wrong, but, all is well if he had missed like a 40-yarder just a few drives earlier, but hits from 54 and they lose. I was pulling up the box score from the 2022 game, and to Tony's point, to a certain extent, and you guys were there watching, I've never seen a defense play that well and give up 54 points. These drives for Ohio State, 4 plays, 1 yard, 1 play, -13. So I don't know. Oh, that was the fumble that Iowa took in for a touchdown. 10 plays, 75. for the touchdown. 4 plays, 4 yards.
Hmm.
5 plays, 17 yards. 5 plays, 22 yards. 8 plays, 24 yards. 1 play, -2. 1 play, 0. So that's I don't know what's going on there. Punt, kickoff, interception. 3 plays, 5 yards. So that's a 3 and out. 4 plays, 15 yards. So their offense really didn't do much in that game. It was just Iowa's offense was so incredibly horrific. And then they finally started to kind of break their will in the fourth quarter. But yeah, that was the strangest. I think they only had like 320 yards of total offense in that game in which they scored 54 points.
Yeah, that was a little bit stunning to look back on that. Remember it that it was more Iowa self-destructing than Ohio State dominating them. Interesting thought. I was so tired from catching an early fight this morning, but Cade McNamara in 2021 was the starting quarterback of record when Michigan beat Ohio State 42-27 in the Big House. It's kind of like he's the starting pitcher who gets a win in a 10-7 victory because he really didn't have a lot of fingerprints on that game. He threw an interception, I think, to the late great is it Bryson Shaw? Was that who it was, Tony?
Mm-hmm.
Safety, Bryson Shaw, who then went on to USC with who was that guy that was a Grinch?
Yep.
Who? Good Lord. All the names and faces are coming back to me. Went out there to USC and played for him for a while out there. But yeah, it was. So he's 1-0 in his career against Ohio State. Now that and $7 will get you a cup of coffee downtown, but at least he can tell his guys he's got experience being on the winning side against Ohio State. He only threw it was like 13 of 19 for like 160 yards with an interception, and that was the game where Ohio State absolutely could not stop the running game. It was Blake Corum and another running back just ran all over him. So yeah, it was
Hassan Haskins. Yeah.
Yes,
Had 5 touchdowns in that game.
Yeah, it was crazy. So,
I will say Caleb Johnson against Iowa State rushed for like 180 some yards, but he was 11 of 17, 11 carries for 17 yards in the fourth quarter. So like they wore down as well. So
yeah,
rushed for 135 yards in the second and third quarters total. And then they shut him down in the fourth quarter when his long carry was, I think, 8 yards, and he had 3 or 4 negative yardage carries and a couple of no gains in there. So that's what I'm wondering if the same thing kind of happens this week, where they're so reliant upon Caleb Johnson that eventually he just can't do any more. Similar to Michigan right now with their reliance on Kalel Mullings, where you can only rely on you can only put so much on their shoulders, and he can go the distance at any point, but also 11 carries, 17 yards against Iowa State. He lit up Minnesota. It is interesting with Cade McNamara, who Iowa has played 2 FBS, two Power 5, 2 Power 4 opponents in Minnesota and Iowa State. McNamara is averaging like 3.5 yards per pass attempt in those games. The other games he's doing better, but when they face a real, not even a real defense, just an actual, 85 scholarship team type of defense, there's no passing game. And so I think I mentioned this on one of the recent episodes of Buckeye Weekly. If you need any more evidence of Connor Stalions' impact on Michigan football, Cade McNamara took the Wolverines to the playoffs. He was a playoff quarterback, and he gets Iowa, and yeah, it's different weapons outside and things like that. But there's nothing in the passing game for Iowa. So there's so much reliance on the defense and Caleb Johnson that it's not a great formula. But as we've seen, if you just score 24 points in your Iowa, you're going to win most of your games.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you look at Cade McNamara's career, yeah, he put together a nice season with a ton of support. Obviously, this massive running game and this elite defense protecting him. 15 TDs, 6 picks, about a 64% passer, I believe, that year. but he's played 8 games since then, 8 or 9 games for Iowa. And the 3 games that he auditioned for Michigan when he lost to JJ McCarthy, and he's not been very good. I had some people get on me the other day because I said, let's go through the quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He's better than 3 or 4 out of 18. That's about where he ranks. That's about where I would take him. He's not that good.
Well,
He can manage a game to a certain extent.
And I think I saw somebody post like his QBR, ESPN QBR is lower than Alex Orji's, which is, and I mean, even right now he's the number 15th rated passer. Orji's not on here because he doesn't have enough pass attempts in the stats that I'm looking at. But I mean, he is what he is, and it's not good enough, and it's below average statistically and in reality, and that's. I thought maybe they would get something more out of the Northwestern transfer that they got, and that's not happening either. And just it's a better offense than last year because of the running game, and Cade McNamara, when he's healthy, is better than what they had last year. But you're only so much better. It's not a dangerous offense in terms of passing, but you do need to stop Caleb Johnson. And as Jim Knowles said, not only tackle him because the linebackers have had tackling issues, but knock him back because he said he's the king of getting 2 extra yards once you hit him. And so that turns, that gives you a 2nd and 5 instead of a 2nd and 7. And that's eventually a 3rd and 2 instead of a 3rd and 5. So they want to hit him and knock him back and limit them. Because if you put Iowa into a 3rd and long situation, you're going to win the majority of those downs.
I think Rod referenced that he was at the 1995 Ohio State-Iowa game, and Ohio State was up 56-0, I think, at halftime. And then John Cooper put a lot of the backups in to save his guys, and Iowa scored 35 points in the second half. So it was 56-35 was the final score, kind of a weird one. And Coop said, anybody who's worried about us running it up on somebody, there you got your proof right there, type thing, because they were, naming the score each week with that great offense there for a while. Iowa has not won at Ohio State since 1991, and I was there. It was 16-9, I believe, was the final score. A miserable game for Ohio State, and Iowa played the game in honor of some students who had been shot and killed on their campus back in Iowa City, kind of a mass shooting incident back there in Iowa City. And just a, sad moment, obviously, but that is the last time that Iowa has won a game in Columbus was 1991. So we're seeing a lot of these streaks pop up, like Michigan State hadn't beaten Ohio State in East Lansing since 1999. And, a lot of senses going on every week with these teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, this Cade McNamara situation for the entire offseason, and I'm not there at practice, but I'm reading the tea leaves and going by what the coaches say and the offensive coordinator, Tim Lester. And if I'm making that decision, there is a quarterback battle into the season because they didn't make that decision for McNamara until late in camp. Iowa, for all their quarterback issues, and Cade McNamara is the best quarterback they've had since Nate Stanley, which tells you all you need to know about Iowa quarterback play, is that they do the one thing that they do have that nobody else in the Big Ten basically has, unless I'm missing something, is they have an experienced backup quarterback. This guy's a 69% passer in 200 pass attempts, meaning Brendan Sullivan against Big Ten competition. And he's more mobile. Why they didn't play those guys off early in the season, I don't understand.
I don't know. Maybe too much invested NIL wise, and you got to get your money's worth. But against Iowa State and Minnesota this year, McNamara is 24-48, so that's 50% passing for 161 yards total, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. And so I don't expect things to get better this week when he's facing the best defense he'll see this year. Especially Jim Knowles talking about how they do need to play more press, and I think pressing these guys, it would I mean, you can shut the passing game down either way, whether you want to press them or just stay back and force Iowa and Cade McNamara to complete third down passes. It just depends on what do they think is best to stop the running game in terms of how they cover. Because I know people are getting frustrated by how far off the corners are playing right now. But Ohio State is still the only team in the nation not to allow a 30-yard play from scrimmage this year. So that's one of the upsides, the downsides, if you will.
Yeah, the two big problems Ohio State's defense seems to have, well, three. One, the linebackers really aren't triggering and making a lot of plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. Here's Sonny Styles. I think he's first or second on the team in tackles, and everybody says he sucks, which, I don't agree with that. And that was the first question, I think, for Jim Knowles yesterday. How's Sonny doing? Trying to lead him down the primrose path. And then he answers the question, and he goes, oh, we're getting gaslighted on the linebackers again. Everything's fine here, so whatever. I think the truth's somewhere in the middle, and he's going to get better as the season goes on. I think he's like, Lee and Perry from 2014, where the Navy game, it didn't look very good, but by the end of the year, it looked pretty good. So I think that you just got to let this guy grow and learn on the job. Bright kid, great athlete, and he'll make plays. He can play physical, I suppose, when he's not playing tentative. So that's one. Two, why are the DBs playing off the receivers and giving up so many yards underneath? Doesn't make any sense when you have the, quote, best in America, so allegedly. And C is the pass rush, which was a little bit better this past week. I think maybe 4 sacks total this past week. They had gone from 5 against Akron, down to 3 against Western, down to 1 against Marshall, and then back up to 4 against Michigan State. And Ryan Day is like, you can't just measure it statistically or with sacks. It's consistent pressure against the quarterback. Michigan State had consistent pressure against the quarterback. They blitzed the heck out of Howard. Ohio State, somebody said, was it you, Tony, or somebody that said that Ohio State has the best percentage of 4-man rush getting pressure in the country, getting pressure with 4-man rush, not having to blitz. That's an important statistic, because the more times that you can avoid having to rush to get pressure on the quarterback, the better the defense is going to cover in the back 7, and the way things are going to flow a little bit better. So those are the 3 big things that people are looking for improvement with for Ohio State defensively, and this is a good week as any to make that step. I got to stop the run. That's first and foremost.
Yeah, well, and Carl threw that stat in the chat there, the latest comment in terms of the defense without the pressure, without blitzing. One of the things I thought it was just interesting talking to Jim Knowles about Sonny Styles, and that this is now 4 games of him playing inside linebacker, but also he's not just playing Will, he's also playing Mike, and he's also playing Sam. So they're asking him to do a ton of stuff, and most of the stuff that he's doing right now is for the first time. And a lot of as Jim Knowles said, like, if things are a little bit slow for him or he doesn't trigger as quickly, Knowles then has to go back and look at how many times in practice did they prepare him for this? How many times in practice did he see this? And if they didn't see it at all or didn't see it enough, then Knowles says that's on the coaching. That's on Knowles for not getting him prepared. So a lot of this is learning on the job for Sonny Styles, because you can only prepare somebody in practice. You don't have enough time to get all of the plays that you might see done. You eventually, as I said, you have to rely on you default back to the basics, and that's what Sonny has had to do at times. But there's still plenty of excitement about him and confidence that he will pick it up, because he has picked up the defense. He has picked up the assignments. Now there's still a lot of thinking going on. Once the thinking goes away and it just becomes natural, then I think you'll see more. There's this comparison with Malcolm Rodriguez, who was a safety at Oklahoma State for 3 years and then moved to linebacker. Now he's a linebacker for the Detroit Lions. But he was he played for 5 years, and he was a safety for 3 of those years, starting, I believe, 2 of those years. And so when he moved to linebacker, he was a 4th-year guy. And this is Sonny Styles as a 3rd-year guy who graduated a year early. So skipped a senior year of high school and is young for his age, essentially, in terms of where he's playing and being now a junior. But one of the things that Noel said is we don't have 3 years to develop you like they do at Oklahoma State. At Ohio State, a lot of times that 3rd year is your last year. So you have to be an accelerated program in terms of developing. And so they knew this would eventually be where he would end up at linebacker, but the process to get there has taken a little bit of time with 2 years at safety. And he played some Sam both as a freshman and sophomore a little bit, just as a bigger safety. But on the inside, it's a totally new game for him. They're asking him to do a lot. There were at Marshall, he had the green dot. He was making the calls. I'm not sure if it was him or Cody Simon last week, but he's got a lot on his plate. And so if he's not an All-American right away, few players are. And I know people look at Arvell Reese and say, look at him. He's doing well, but he's also not asked to do as much as the other guys.
Ryan, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you so much for your support, sir. I cannot say enough about how much I appreciate you guys, your coverage of our favorite football team and all the sidebar conversations. The Iowa Hawkeyes are coming to town. What do or should we expect from this year? Same as always? Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
pretty much, Ryan, as we've been discussing. I will say this. There's a conventional thought that, okay, Ohio State potentially is the best defense in the country. Iowa is what they are on offense, which for them is a huge upgrade for as marginal as he is at quarterback and a better running game than what we've seen, even though we think Iowa offensive line, their offensive lines have not been good recently, and they've got an offensive line and a Heisman Trophy contender at running back to this point. That do you play just straight up and say, we're as good as we are, we just play straight up and treat them like any other team? Or do we load up on the run thinking, okay, let's see if they can somehow burn us, but we're going to stop the run. We're going to dedicate ourselves to the run. And then if we get burned, we get burned. Or, hey, we play straight up, and if they're moving the ball on the ground, then we have to load up the box and stop the run.
Well, as Jim Knowles said, they've activated Caleb Downs last week, and you saw him in the running game, and they were not activating him so much in the first few games, but they have activated him now. They will continue to activate him in the running game, I would assume, and he's going to be near the line. He'll be near the line of scrimmage when he needs to be, in terms of he'll start out like 10 or 12 yards behind into the secondary, but then get to the line of scrimmage about the same time as the ball carrier. So he is going to be in the box, I think, enough to help the running game. But I'm with you. Do you even need to get crazy in this one, or fancy with defensively? Like, do you need to be aggressive, even though you think, well, there's no way these guys are going to beat us if we get aggressive, but they can hit a shot over top. That can't happen. So do you just try to avoid that, keep everything in front of you, knowing that eventually the Ohio State defense is going to win on a 1st and 2nd down and make it 3rd and 7, and this is going to lead to a punt or a long field goal or something like that. So what the answer is Jim Knowles will say, well, we're going to mix it up, and that's what they'll do. But defensively for Iowa, Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator, has been there since 1999, came in with Kirk Ferentz, has been a defensive coordinator since, I think, 2012. And it is what it is. And as Chip Kelly said, you know what to expect, but Iowa's defense also knows how everybody tries to attack them, so they can prepare for it. And they all know what they're doing. So it's Iowa. It's always Iowa. It'll always be Iowa until Kirk Ferentz leaves and Brett Bielema takes over, and then it'll just be a little bit more like Illinois and Wisconsin, Iowa, which is all the same.
Yeah.
I've been muting.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this game on Saturday, just to see if Ohio State is for real, to see if Iowa, what part of their game is real, because as some of the people have said here, you've built gaudy statistics against some really bad teams. I think Michigan State, started 3-0, is probably going to end up in that 6 or 7 win situation at the end of the year. I didn't see a whole lot of redeeming qualities out of that team this past week. They didn't defend and they didn't score, so it was not a banner day for the new coach Jonathan Smith. Um, you know, Kirk Ferentz, as you guys said, he's consistent. He's always usually right around that 9 or 10 win plateau, and that's where I figured this team will end up this year as well.
This is actually the only Big Ten stadium in which Kirk Ferentz has not won a game, and he's 2-9 against Ohio State in his
Both
career.
of them
That's
at
got to be
home.
that's got to be his worst record against anyone. I got to think in the Big Ten. I can't imagine. I immediately went to Michigan. He's I think 7-7 against Michigan.
Wow.
So 2-9
Yeah.
against Ohio State, and we'll
Two blowouts at Iowa City. The other one was in 2004
yes.
when Ohio State was going through some really tough times. They're up 3 games in a row. Started 3-0, then went 3-3. I think it was Wisconsin at home, Iowa, and Northwestern on the road, all kind of piled up there. Or no, it might be it.
They had the right guy sitting on the bench for that Iowa game in 2004. They hadn't discovered that they had the future Heisman Trophy winner sitting on the bench. He should have been playing quarterback.
Yeah, I think Troy came in and threw a late touchdown, and that may have been the changing of the guard. I think they lost the game like 33-7 or something stupid. So yeah, those were some dark days in 04, buddy.
Well, 8-4, dark days. Yes.